What's up, everybody? Joe Brown here. This is the Heresy Financial Show. And today we are looking at a profit warning from Switzerland's second largest bank, Credit Suisse. They are saying, hey, we're in trouble. Not drastic trouble, at least just yet, but they are saying, hey, look, our profits are going down. We had some big losses, and we are warning investors we've got some rough times ahead. So we're going to take a look at what is going on to Credit Suisse. Ready? Let's dive in. Take a look with me at this article from Reuters. Credit Suisse flags Q2 loss in latest string of profit warnings. So we can see that it is their Switzerland's second largest bank. They issued a profit warning. It's saying that, hey, 2022, this is a transition year. They're trying to get past some costly scandals. They had to reshuffle top management, restructuring from risk taking in its investment bank. It's got some problems. So number one, those are things that are not systemic. Those aren't like global issues. Those are like, hey, we made some mistakes as a bank and we are trying to get past those and deal with the consequences. That's understandable. Now, it's important to note that all financial institutions, especially the size of this one, are all interconnected. So if one day, let's say tomorrow, a bank this size, financial institution says, hey, we're insolvent, we're bankrupt, that has ripple effects that could start knocking over the financial system like dominoes. Same thing 12, 13 years ago when Lehman Brothers was in trouble. That's why everybody in the industry was so worried. That's why the Fed stepped in, the government stepped in, because they were like, hey, we don't want this to knock over the entire global financial system. And so that's not what's going on here, but it is important to keep in mind, because as we see more and more things like this happen, where trouble pops up with financial institutions all around the world, it just takes one domino. Right now, they might be wobbling, just takes one falling over to start tipping over the rest of them. So it's important to keep that in the back of our mind. Not happening yet, but could happen very soon, especially as we see more things like this. Let's look on. The lender said that the Russia-Ukraine war and significant monetary tightening has led to weak customer flows and clients reducing their borrowings so far in the second quarter, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. Okay, so the Russia-Ukraine invasion, absolutely, this is something that is impacting everybody, all financial institutions. You have something like that happen, you have sanctions happen, you have payments have to start getting routed different ways because Russia's looking for ways to get around the sanctions, to still make sure they don't default on their bond payments, to make sure that they can circumnavigate this crazy time right now. And you've got many nations all around the world not getting the energy they need. Prices are skyrocketing as a result. So you have all of these unexpected things happening. And I've explained this many times, but banks' balance sheets, especially in Europe, are highly geared. They're highly leveraged. And so if I was to do an arbitrage trade, I might sell shares of Google that are the voting class shares and buy shares of Google that are the non-voting class shares. And I wouldn't just sell, I'd sell short the ones that I'm selling. So I'm bringing in, just for ease of example here, I'm bringing in $101 from the shares I sell short, and then I'm buying shares for $100. So I make $1. Now Google shares, they should go up and down together. I make $1, and I expect at some point those shares will converge because they're the same shares, they just have the difference of the voting rights. And when they do, then I'll close that trade out. I'll buy back the ones that I shorted, and I'll sell the ones that I bought, and I'll collect, I'll close out with a 50-cent profit there. You're not going to make a lot of money on that. So you go to the bank and you say, hey, look, bank, I'm doing this trade. It's risk-free because they're both Google shares. They can't move far apart forever. They'll eventually come back. So the bank says, sure, I'll give you a massive loan on that because it's risk-free. You're making free money right now, printing money. And so they give you a massive amount of money in order to do this with leverage. And so that's what the banks are engaging in. They're engaging in these trades that are called relative value trades. And since they're supposedly risk-free, they use a ton of leverage. And so they're able to lever up their balance sheets. Well, when unexpected things happen, like in my example, that'd be these shares unexpectedly moving apart, well, then I'd have to close out my trade, which is buying pressure on the ones that I shorted, but it's already moving up, so that makes it worse for me. And it's selling pressure on the ones that I bought, which is pushing it down more, which is, again, worse for my position. So you have all these banks engaged in the same trades that could very quickly result in a fast unwind of all of these trades. And since they're so leveraged, it could result in wiping out their entire market value, their entire market cap like that, just very easily with a 2, 3, 4% loss on their balance sheets. Wipes out their entire market cap. So they're not in a great position right now. So that's what I expect the major risk is from the continuing war between Russia and Ukraine. But we have to look further at what they said. They said that significant monetary tightening had led to weak customer flows, clients reducing their borrowings so far. So what is going on here? Everybody has always gone with the assumption that when interest rates go up, it's good for financial institutions like banks, like lenders, right? Because if you were able to loan out $100, you make $1 on that. You think, oh, it'd be better for the bank if they could loan out $100 and make $2 on that, right? Wrong. When you have easy monetary conditions where interest rates are forced lower artificially, everybody borrows the max. When interest rates then from there move up, they go higher, everybody's already borrowed as much as they can at the cheapest interest rates. That means when interest rates start going up, people aren't borrowing more, they're not even borrowing the same. They're paying off that old debt as much as they can. Because to the extent that they have to keep that debt and roll that debt over, use new debt to pay off that old debt, it's too expensive. Their debt service cost goes up. And so as interest rates continue to move higher, not only do you have a slowing down of new borrowing, but you have paying off that old debt. And so now you get situations where banks are getting their profits squeezed because interest rates are going up. Because yes, they're making more per dollar that they're lending out, but they're lending out far less than they were before because it's just too expensive for most people to borrow. And it's especially telling that this is coming particularly from the Asia Pacific region. This is a region where, culturally people are very different than they are in the West. In the West, people are much more spendy. People are much more risky. They borrow a lot more. They're not financially responsible. But in the Asia Pacific region, especially places like Japan, you have people that they have a lot stronger of tradition and heritage of being more conservative with their finances, saving more, paying down debt, deleveraging, being a little bit more financially responsible. And so when times get tough, people are going to save more. They're going to borrow less. They're going to pay off more of that debt. It's one of the reasons why Japan hasn't had a lot of inflation compared to the West over the last couple of decades, even though the central bank has been trying, because people just didn't go along with the plan. They saved and they paid down debt. And so you're seeing this coming out of that region because people are doing it there more. And this is why central banks don't need to get interest rates back to neutral to stop inflation or above neutral to start to combat inflation and bring it down, because we've got this force pushing prices up artificially. We've got this false boom from the expansion of the money supply. It's like strapping a rocket to something, but eventually, if that fuel runs out, you need more and more fuel to get that higher and higher and higher. So left to its own accords, it would eventually run out of fuel and plummet back down to Earth because gravity's pulling it back down. That's the natural force. Same thing with prices and booms. If you cause a boom and then just step back and watch, the boom will happen and then everything will collapse because that's the natural result of the boom happening. The bust is made inevitable by the boom, which was caused by the artificial expansion of the money supply through easy credit. And so if you want to keep that boom going, you eventually reach escape velocity where you escape the atmosphere and you get up there, up past gravitational pull where you can go into orbit. You don't need to keep on having rocket fuel just to stay up there for a long time. That's hyperinflation, right? So you keep on printing more and more and more and more and more and more money until bam, you reach escape velocity and the currency collapses and prices go to infinity measured in that currency. And so if you just step back though, before you reach escape velocity, then everything crashes. And so you don't need to raise interest rates to neutral, all you have to do is step back. The boom will result in a bust automatically. So that's why everybody right now is saying, hey, there's no way inflation's going to come down right now. There's no way we can have deflation because conditions are still tight, but they're saying that conditions are still easy. But they're not easy compared to what they used to be even just a year ago. They are much tighter than what they were even a year ago, which means that we've already set in motion the opposite happening, that velocity is not going to reach escape velocity, and in fact it's starting to come back down pretty quickly here. And that's what we're seeing happening with Credit Suisse. They're saying, hey, borrowers are drying up, we're seeing tightening conditions, it's making it harder to do business, we're seeing losses, and so they're saying we're in trouble. And as more and more banks, especially of this size, start to say we're in trouble, then we have to start asking the question, when will central banks come back and light up those rocket boosters yet again and risk reaching escape velocity and hyperinflation of their currencies? Only time will tell. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.